My neighbors are being noisy.
Yes, I would like very much. Bubbies episode 7.
What's that? Who's there? Oh my God! It's Bubbies.
Welcome back to Bubbies episode 7. Hiatus over a week. We apologize.
Yes, that was our mistake. We didn't plan. We didn't plan well enough ahead. We should have made 3 episodes instead of 2, but that's all right.
Because Russell was in Canada for the past 10 days. Yay, Canada.
Yay. I was still here.
Yay.
Living a meaningless existence. Before we get into our episode topics, we need to make at least one correction. Our last episode had a lot of factual fallacies.
Well, yeah, that's to be expected.
And we realized that as soon as the episode was done. I can't remember what they all are now, but one of the main ones is that Rockefeller was not the guy that I was talking about. It was Andrew Carnegie. So I got my millionaires mixed up.
I don't think anyone's getting their news from us, so it's okay.
But we're a news podcast.
They're just... Are we?
So today's topic of conversation is going to be traveling.
Traveling. Take me back.
Traveling the world is a wondrous thing. It gives you a new perspective on life. It lets you see new things, meet new people, experience new cultures.
It reminds you how meaningless this all is.
And that in some places, if you say the F word, you can get arrested.
And not fuck. If you say faggot, you can get... Oh no, I'm under arrest.
Good, the police are here. We need to leave.
So, for the past 10 days, I have been in Canada, which was a neat experience because I am like third, fourth. I don't know. My family bloodline is Canadian.
You have a Canadian bloodline.
Yeah. So
it was like destiny.
So that matters not at all. But so I have been there once before when I was very, very, very baby. When I was very baby.
Do you remember anything?
No, because I was a baby. So this was technically my first trip to Canada.
Where did you go?
I went to Vancouver.
Where is that?
It's on the west coast, and it's like a fart away from Washington.
Oh, good.
Vancouver was pretty cool. It was probably one of the more cities I've been to. And I don't know, it was very interesting to see the contrast between a Canadian city and a U.S. city, because one of the biggest things that'll jump out at you if you travel to Canada is that Canada is just America if America had a liberal government. So not a lot is different, but it is at the same time.
Was it weird being so close to the border of America and seeing this city that had rainbows and everything painted all over it?
A little bit. I'm not gonna lie. It was a bit like daunting.
Was it culture shock?
I wouldn't go so far to say culture shock, but it was very just interesting because it was Pride in Canada, and the whole city of Vancouver was celebrating Pride, and that statement in itself is a huge contrast as to how the U.S. does things. So when I say the city of Vancouver was celebrating Pride, I don't mean it
was like a block that was doing it.
I don't mean like the LGBTXYZ community of Vancouver organized an event. No, like the city of Vancouver used taxpayer money and funded like a Pride celebration that the whole city participated in, to the point where they even had sidewalks and buildings like painted, rainbow colors. And so it was like, that's kind of neat.
That sounds amazing.
I was like, that's kind of neat to see.
Was there any celebrations and people in parades and things like that during this week? Because in New York, when they do their Pride Week, it's like a huge hullabaloo.
Well, see, they did. It's just that we showed up the day after.
Oh,
so all of the big events had already happened, but the fallout, all of the gay fallout had spread. And so, I mean, and that's the cool thing about traveling, is you get to see how other countries do things. So I got to see what a liberal America would be, and I got to see the positives and the negatives of what a liberal America would be. So, I'm walking around a city looking at all these cool rainbow art stuff, like I'm walking on a sidewalk that was painted with taxpayer money, but I'm also passing 7 homeless people who have all built their own little homeless castle out of trash.
And they're just in the sides of buildings and stuff,
And
because they can't be told to leave, apparently.
And they're literally just like, and I mean, like, this is a assumption. I don't want to be spouting, in misinformation, but the amount of homeless people and the amount of like homeless made structures that just like were fused into the city, there's no way that like being homeless is a crime in Vancouver. I mean, fuck it, let's just Google it right now.
It's like a mixture between a Hoover town and an actual city.
Because if you're homeless in the U.S., that's technically a crime. It's called like, what is it called?
It's not larceny.
Like soliciting?
Soliciting, blah blah. No, not soliciting. Loitering and just hanging around where you don't belong. In fact, in a lot of cities, in a lot of the cities that I've been to, Atlanta, New York, they have spikes on the sides of, like, wherever you're not walking, they have spikes so that homeless people simply cannot sit down in front of your business, which is, to me, that sounds unimaginably cruel. But the other other extreme of that is that you've got a homeless guy who made his newspaper home right in front of your building that is trying to sell people internet or something. You have a cell phone business and you're trying to sell people the iPhone 10. Meanwhile, homeless Joe is over here telling you to fuck off with his pack of dogs.
Yeah. And so, it's like, oh, cool. Look at all this taxpayer money going towards painting the sidewalk red, orange.
Making people feel good.
Like, and then it's like, oh, but there's also a fuck ton of homeless. And, no offense, but like one is a problem and one is like pandering. That's just how it is, in my opinion, obviously. But like, it's like, oh, we had 1,000, like a simple analogy. We had $1,000. We could have spent that towards researching or funding a solution to our homeless problem, or we can spend it on like, painting some buildings so that gay people can like
feel sad.
Can like whip in nay about how gay they are. And I don't know. It's like, so, you know how in the US we have a more red than blue government.
Yeah.
And the red argues what the negative sides of blue views are, but we never actually get to see it. And then you go to Canada and you can actually see some of like the side effects of a blue government. Granted, I would much rather have like, I would much rather pass a little house made out of cardboard with like a dude in it than get shot at my school. So,
pros and cons.
Pros and cons of each negative.
Bubbies. What else was weird about Canada?
I guess another weird thing about Canada, and then again, this goes to the government thing. There was a fuck ton of global warming propaganda, and propaganda has a negative term
connotation,
a negative vibe about it, but it's not. I'm just saying that is a fact. That propaganda is an ideological advertisement in a way. And so every building, every structure, every bathroom, everywhere in Vancouver had save the ocean, recycle, save the ocean, blah, blah, blah. And that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that it is kind of a culture shock to go from the U.S., where the U.S. is like, hey, do you want to recycle? Do it, nerd, whatever.
We won't help you.
Yeah, we won't help you.
We don't have we're not going to implement the infrastructure to recycle.
We don't care. But then you go to Vancouver and it's like every single building has and it's not like different. It's not like, someone spent 24 hours with a large team of people and put these posters everywhere
around the entire city.
The entire city has the same posters around it.
Do you think that that's a Vancouver thing or a Canada thing?
I don't know. That's the other thing is I don't want to sound like I'm an expert because I only went to Vancouver, so I don't know if that's how it is. But if New York is kind of like an exaggerated rest of America, so I can assume that Vancouver would be kind of an exaggerated rest of Canada. But yeah, so it was very interesting. I actually had a harder time adjusting to Canada than Japan, which might surprise you.
That's interesting.
Because when I went to Japan, I went there with, wipe everything you think wipe it. I am an alien. I know nothing.
Nobody speaks your language.
I'm going into this situation blind. I'm going into this situation with zero experience.
People don't shake hands, they bow.
And then you go to Canada And I was trying to do the same thing because, I'm in like travel mode. I'm trying to like approach everything like an idiot so I can like learn as I do it. But it's so similar to the US that I would get tripped up over little things. And people would be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And it's like, I'm trying to like relearn how this works. Like, what do you mean? It's exactly the same. Like the US literally is like 90% just the US. It is like if you go to Canada, it's really not that different. All that's different is like the currency. And then like
Their plastic currency.
and then like the vibe of like politics. That's all that's different. Everything else is the same. Like that's like the culture is pretty much the same. The language is pretty much the same.
They've got some French in there.
Yeah,
but
so
you were in Vancouver, so you were on the opposite side of the language barrier.
Still there's still French everywhere, but like if you come to the US, and then again, it's so similar, but tiny little things are different. So the United States, we've got Hispanics, blacks, whites, and then our two main languages are English and Spanish. That's like the meta here. But if you go to Canada, it is Indian, Asian, specifically South Korean, and then whites, and then you have English and French. And so it's literally like, imagine just going to the US and then there's no black people.
They've all been replaced with East Indians.
And then there's no Hispanics, and then there's no Spanish. It's just French. So like everything's the same there. It's just that one or two things are different. So when you fly on a plane in the US, it's like, all right, put on your seatbelt, and then it says again in Spanish, put on your seatbelt, Hesse. and then in Canada, it's like, put on your seatbelt. And then it's like, oui, put on your seatbelt.
S'il vous plaît, put on your seatbelt.
Put on your seatbelt, ratatouille.
I need to work on my French accent.
Bubbies.
I know that from my father's stories of traveling to Canada on the eastern side, that if you go to the east side of Canada, there is like no English anywhere, and everybody speaks French. Like the entire country has like a language gradient. Who do you think? Did you notice who was like the most discriminated against? Like here in America, it's obviously Mexicans, because
Discriminated against?
Like the one like the lowest in the food chain. Like here you've got white people, and then I guess black people, and then Mexicans.
I think it's around.
Yeah.
I know. I think black people are definitely the most shit on in the U.S. right now. I don't think Hispanics are.
But did you notice in Canada, like the Indians were the ones that people were like, "Oh, why are you fucking Indian?" Or was it like,
here's this is what we opened with, is that like being racist in Canada is illegal.
So it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
At least not out in the open.
Well, yeah, but that was my point, because so the way I learned that is me and my party went to a really good breakfast place called the Elbow Room. It was like a little breakfast diner. They had lunch, brunch, and breakfast, and we thought that it was like a normal, air quote, normal diner, and that since it was plastered in gay stuff, it was just also celebrating Pride. But we go inside, and it's an actually like the place by default is a gay breakfast. It's like a gay breakfast diner, because you walk in and there's like, it's like, welcome to the Elbow Room. Here's our 10 rules. Follow them. And it's like, rule number 1, if you want water, get off your ass and get it yourself.
Yes.
And then it was like, rule number 2, if you get coffee, we'll bring you the first cup, but if you want a refill, better get off your ass and do it yourself. It's like rule number 3, don't stand around because there's gay men behind you. And there's like a bunch of M's, and we were just like, we were like, this is amazing. And so it was actually like the greatest breakfast ever too. It was like the best breakfast.
How many meat and 2 veg would you give it out of 12?
Jeez, what? 5.
Oh, that's a stellar review. Do they tip in Canada? Is that a thing?
I tipped a lot, and everyone said like thanks, so I assume
hard
it's
to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's not rude to tip, but I don't think it happens a lot.
Because in Japan they tip.
Yeah, I know. No. Yeah, this is the huge no in Japan. But like in Canada, so I landed at midnight on Thursday, and I was not in the mood to walk, and I was like half asleep, and I have contacts, and biologically, when you get sleepy, your eyes shoot this shit on themselves, and that's why you want to close your eyes, is because your eyes naturally like put this gunk on your fucking eye, so you'll close. And if you wear contacts, it gets on the contact and not the eye, so you literally go blind. So like if you wear contacts and get really tired, you just straight up go blind.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me before. There's nothing, you can't see anything. The world is just a blur.
Yeah, so I had that going on, and I'm trying to like maneuver around Vancouver blind, and so I just see a taxi and I jump in, and the bill is like, which also taxis were stupid cheap. I used taxis a lot and spent maybe like $15 total. It was amazing. I would and they would like fly through the city, and they'd be like, all right, you're here, $4. And I just gave him $5 and was like, don't worry about change. And he was like, oh, really? Thanks. So I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
That just reminds me of the taxi story that I have of Japan, but we'll get to that later on in the episode. Is there anything else about Canada that you noticed? Anything odd? Anything fun?
Anything odd or fun? Well, their currency is
made of plastic.
Their currency's made of like fucking plastic, but it's waterproof, which is
made of plastic.
It's waterproof, which is cool.
Make a fucking umbrella out of it.
They have like scratch and sniff on their fucking currency.
I need to like somehow find a fresh Canadian bill and just like scratch it.
Yeah, so like I got a fresh 20 out of the ATM and like scratched it, and it was just like maple, just out. And I was like, wow, what a fucking weird
what a waste of time and money.
What a weird thing. They don't have pennies.
Yes, they've only got the nickel. That's
they don't. The lowest thing they have is 5 cents. So and what they do is they round. So like this is what I want to know, what the fuck this does, like a ripple effect. So if you give someone in Canada, so let's say your bill is $1.06, and you give them and you give them
$1 and a nickel.
$1 and a nickel. You're owed what? 4 cents, right?
Yeah.
You just don't get it. You just don't get that 4 cents.
Or rather, $1 and a dime. Otherwise, you'd be selling them short. So $1 and a dime, you just wouldn't get your 4 cents back.
Yeah, you just would not get your 4 cents back.
Cool.
You just don't get it. Like, you don't get your change. And so I want to know what the fuck that does as like a butterfly effect. Because if they cannot give you, if they can't give you change, that if you're owed change that's less than 5 cents, you're just not getting change. And so it's like, so I mean, and like all, billion people living in Canada like deal with this, and there's transactions made constantly. So like, where does all of these like 4, 3, 2, 1 cents go?
I don't know. Where do you think that most people just use credit cards anyway? Did you see ample use of actual currency?
I saw a lot of debit card usage, but it was always by like people in my party and like other tourists. But like people in Vancouver just used money.
Yeah, same sort of thing in Japan as well.
It's just money. Like no one really uses cards. Like you would think that cards would be like a bigger thing in cities, but in my experience, cities is where cash is used the most. And like cards is more convenient for like city or like country folk and people in smaller towns. And I wonder why.
I don't know. That's a curious one. We'll have to do some research on that. Somebody figure that out for us and then send us an email. Bubbies.
Also, I just found out that Canada does have homelessness laws, but ours are like very vague. So anyone that's doing anything can like get poked with the legal stick.
Right.
But like Canada's is like you just can't be in a national park.
So there's like loopholes everywhere.
Like you can't be in a national park, and you can't be on like public transportation. So like sidewalks are like fair game, it sounds.
That's curious.
And also I also read another thing that was like there are certain like rules against building structures, but like just the vibe of Canada, the police don't agree with like arresting homeless people, so they just don't, apparently.
That's also very curious.
But again,
I've never heard of a police force not abiding by the written law of the land.
Well, that's the other thing is that like if you go to New York, there's police every fucking second and everywhere. But like I was in Vancouver 10 days. I saw 3 cops total.
And where were they? On the street?
They were just driving, just patrolling. I never saw one outside of a vehicle either. I never saw with my own eyes a cop in uniform.
Curious.
Walking around.
Curious that he was also driving a car and not riding a horse. Yuck, 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 yuck.
And so I guess the other thing is that like, and so like I saw a fuck ton, like there was a fuck ton of homeless people. And, again, the pros and cons of a liberal government. There's a lot of homeless people, but with that said, I didn't see a lot of violence.
No?
I didn't see a lot of violence. I saw a lot of verbal violence, but nothing ever got physical, and I never once saw any weapon or like an indication of a weapon. So like in the US, like I'm super cautious with anyone and everyone because everyone's fucking packing heat here. Like that's like a fact. It's like anyone you fucking talk to, anyone you bump into, any sort of altercation, either person could be armed, and because it's the U.S.
And you're allowed to.
And
anyone can get one.
And then Canada, I think Canada has similar gun laws to us. They don't outright ban them, but a lot of people just don't have them, I guess. And because there was only one.
Well, they don't have an NRA probably.
There was only one incident in Canada where I saw any sort of evidence of like actual physical violence, and it was some dude comes running out of an alley towards us, and he has like a black eye, and he's all like beat up, and he's like, "Oh, I just got attacked because I'm gay, and they have a knife," and he just kept running, and I was like, "Whoa!" And that was the only thing that happened. Like I never once saw any sort of like holster, never once saw anyone acting like they were, packing heat. I never saw a gun ever. And so like, the pros and cons, there's a fuck ton of homeless people, which is annoying. It just is. It's annoying, and it's, an eyesore.
But it's better than the threat of being shot by a random person at any point in time.
Yeah. Like no one's gonna walk up to me and just blow my brains out because they feel like it in Canada. But there is a fuck ton of homeless people, which is annoying. I mean, there's homeless people everywhere, and yeah, they're people, and I understand that they're in crappy situations. But it is, just annoying because it's if you're running a society, it's in my opinion unacceptable to have a bunch of homeless people just around because they are burdens to the rest of society.
They are it's cruel to say, but they are a baggage on your municipality.
Because because if you're trying to run an effective and efficient city, and you've got your middle class and upper class people working and doing stuff, they have to deal with this abundance of homeless people, either physically or like mentally, and like how much money, how much change is like just thrown at the homeless people, and then that just goes, depending on their situation, that just goes towards like booze or drugs.
From what I understand, Canada's approach to, at least Vancouver's approach to the homeless problem is to sort of not do a whole lot about it. And in fact, in some ways, they enable the homeless people. Specifically, I know about Heroin Alley. And Heroin Alley is a part of Vancouver where homeless people, drug addicts will go, and they have like medical professionals set up. They have tents. You can go, and they will just give you a free sterile needle, and they will like supervise you as you shoot up your heroin, so they make sure that you don't take too much. And then they just go, and the entire area is just littered with people who are doing the heroin thing, where they sit on the sidewalk and they've got their arms stretched out in front of them, and they're just like groaning and swaying side to side. And it's one of the most abysmal apocalyptic things I've ever seen. It is like the epitome of the negative side of a liberal approach, of a leftist approach.
Yeah.
And I don't think, this is my personal opinion, I don't think that that's an acceptable form of dealing with it.
I don't think it's acceptable either, because like you said, they're just enabling.
Because it's not like they're going, it's like, all right, you get this heroin thing, and then we're also going to give you options to get over it or something like that. Like there was I saw a documentary on a rehab facility for alcoholism, and they allowed the patients that were accepted to drink, they would like have them vended to them. So it's like our PBR, and then it's like, all right, here is your PBR, pay up the money, and then they would give it to them. And they're like, but they also had programs in that facility to be like, this is how you get over it. You have to achieve for yourself the desire to not be addicted anymore. And it was like massive amount of push when they also had a little bit of give.
Yeah.
And that's not what Heroin Alley is in Vancouver. It is just a Band-Aid on this problem, a Band-Aid that actually makes the problem conceivably worse.
And yeah, I guess a huge difference between homeless in America and homeless in Canada is that homeless people in the U.S., like, you know, the ones that aren't con men, because there's a lot of, and that's just universal. Like,
I've probably given money to a few people who are like not actually homeless.
there's homeless in Vancouver that are con men. There's homeless in the U.S. that are con men. But like the people that are actually legitimately homeless and, you know, at risk and needy, I've noticed that the ones in the U.S. have much more humility about it. They're like, oh my God, please, I am like a mess. I'm a huge,
I got kicked out from my job, and
you know, I'm a huge fuck up right now. I just need a little bit of help, please, you know. And then they're always like, you know, God help.
I need enough gas money to get to the city where I have a job or something.
Yeah, and it's like, please, I'm just, you know, I'm so fucking pitiful right now. And then, but like 9 out of 10 homeless people in Canada were like the rudest, like most fucking bratty people I've ever fucking interacted with. Every sign I saw was like blah blah blah, like literally like written out BLAH. They're like blah blah. I'm homeless. You know the drill. You know, stuff like that. And it's like, wow, all right, you obviously
don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
therefore I don't give a fuck. Fuck off.
Like I only saw one sign that was like, I just kicked the mic. I wouldn't fuck it up. I only saw one sign, and it was like that was like the slightest bit, like, you know, humble, and it was just like, I just need help. If there's money in this hat, can you please wake me up so I can go get food with it? And then there's just a dude sleeping next to his sign, you know, and it's like, all right, you know, it's a decent.
At least he's not a prick.
Yeah, but like there's a lot of homeless people, and they're also like, you know, homeless communities. Like every day I walked, because I was there for a convention, which I saw some awesome stuff, but I don't think I think we'll just save that for a different podcast.
Yeah, a whole different bag of beans.
Yeah, but like, so every morning I would walk to this conference center by myself, because I'm not scared of cities. And so I would just walk by myself, just, you know, blah, blah, blah. And every day I would walk down the same street, and I would walk past like a little, like, it was like the junk city from fucking Bug's Life. It was just like, it was like a little community made out of like garbage. And there was like 7 dogs in there, and like 8 dudes, and like 3 girls, and they're all wearing like, and like they looked like something out of a movie. Like there was a big fat Bubba looking dude, and he had like a literal staff with like feathers on it.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and it was just like, you know, it was like this little like homeless community, and it's like cool.
That sounds rad as hell.
It was a little rad.
I wish that I would be able that you can talk to people like that. Unfortunately, I find that most of them are unintelligible.
Well, and then I had one situation. I felt horrible, but it's just because my filter was discombobulated, because I met Steve Williams while I was there, and that's the guy that made the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. And so I met Steve Williams like one-on-one, like I'm talking to you now, and we talked and stuff. And like he's the reason that like CGI is where it is today, basically, because when Jurassic Park was coming out, they were gonna do stop motion and practical effects, and his team of like 19-year-olds were like, let's do CGI, and the producers were like, no, that looks stupid. And then he like was rebellious and like made like a test animation of the T-Rex that's in the movie, like the famous T-Rex. And then he just like left it on his computer while the producers were walking by one day. And that's why the movie is now almost entirely CGI.
He's got some fucking skills.
Yeah.
Especially back in CGI like that back in those days.
Yeah, you had to code it manually. You didn't like get to drag and like hotkey. It was like code like points. So wow. But yeah, so I just met Steve Williams, and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, wow, I just met Steve Williams. Whoa. And I'm like, my mind's racing, and I walk past this woman, and she's like, can you give me $2 for food? I just went, no, and then just kept walking. And I was just like, I didn't even process what had happened. I'm like still freaking out, and everybody was like, Jesus, Russell. And I was like, what? And they're like, you just told her no. And I was like, oh, fuck, I did. God damn it. And I was like, and again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying. There's nothing wrong. You know, like they are humans. I'm not trying to dehumanize them, but like you've got a city of functioning people trying to efficiently run a society, and there's all these little hiccups of like bumping into like people that like, you know, are just, you know,
they are what the Republicans say all homeless people are, which is people who do nothing for themselves and just expect people to like just hand them shit.
Yeah, like leeches. And it's and not every single one of them is a leech, but some of them are. And that's the hardest thing about it. Everyone's story is different. everyone's got a different situation, and that's why it's so hard to deal with homelessness, because it's not a blanket problem.
It's not a generalized issue. There's not like a single source.
It's not a blanket problem. There's a woman in Congress right now, and or I think running for Congress or maybe Senate. I can't remember what level of our government, but there is a woman in our government system who was raised homeless, and it's because her dad lost his job, and so her dad, her mom, and her lived in an abandoned gas station for like 15 years. And then she was homeless and they pinched their pennies, and then she went to college and got a degree, and now she's in the Senate, right?
Oh.
And so it's what a fucking story. But unfortunately, that it doesn't seem that's not the majority case. The majority case seems to be I did a drug once, and I'm too irresponsible to fucking deal with being an adult, and that's the majority of it, in my opinion, just from what I've seen with my own eyes.
I would correct that and say that the heroin thing is a lot more brain chemistry than it is a conscious decision. But you're absolutely right. It is it's interesting.
Bubbies.
It's interesting what an artificial border can do for different civilizations. Vancouver and Washington, the massive difference between the two.
You know where I didn't see a lot of homeless people?
Where's that?
Japan.
Oh, Japan. Now, I have heard stories about the homeless people in Japan. Apparently, they are just there, and if you walk by them, they don't beg for money or anything. They're just smiling and be like, "Hello," and then they just they go about their way. They have their own little huts and things, and they're completely out of the way of everybody. A completely different situation from America or Canada. Because Japan is fucking great.
Japan is awesome.
Holy shit.
The mindset of Japanese people is the correct one.
My homeland is truly my homeland. Everything there, I pretty much agree with everything that goes on there.
I mean, it's hard not to.
I mean, look at the results.
It's pretty bombastic, and it's just because the Japanese have such a they have so much humility.
They have a lot of humility, and in America we're like, yeah, fuck yeah, America. But in Japan, they almost take it a step. They take it a step further, because everything that they do for the good of their country
and their society,
and it comes from the clan mentality. Everyone that's a part of the clan has to do something that benefits the clan. They are representative of their clan, and Japan just became one big giant clan, and it's amazing. Oh, I remember the first place that I ate at in Japan. It was a tonkatsu pork place. Oh, I was so tired. I was exhausted, and it was so crunchy and juicy and crispy, and anything to go back to Japan.
I mean, let's do it. Let's save our money and go back together.
Yeah, we should do that. You need to take me clubbing in Japan, because you saw a completely different side of Japan than I did. Because I went for family purposes, and you went to go fuck around and enjoy the country at its fullest extent.
Yes.
Let's see. I just remember, because did you ever go to any of the more derelict places of Japan? Because you lived in a rural place.
I spent most of my time in Japan has been in the sticks of Japan, and just what we would consider Murfreesboro, Tennessee, but Japan.
So you've got an even more because the places that I went to Yokohama, and then we traveled around to all of the temple spots, but we also went to a little spot called Chiba, which is where my cousins live, my 80-year-old cousins. And that place was interesting because the entire town was basically just crumbling at the mercy of a bad economy. So all the only people that lived there were old people. There were docks and things of what once was. I have a picture of just this massive trash heap that was in these concrete docks that lead up to there. And you could see once upon a time, this was a bustling port town. People would go fishing there, and they would bring in hordes and hordes of fish. And you had young people that were trying to build their lives there, because I saw the remnants of an old elementary school. It was completely abandoned and derelict, something straight out of The Grudge or something. They had panda bears painted on there, and their black parts of their eyes were gone, so it was just these big white voids.
Jeez.
And but it was still, even though it was decayed, it was extremely quaint. and it wasn't like it didn't look like Naruto, like the place that you were at was. Where was you were? You weren't near Fukushima. You were.
I was in oh god, I'm starting to forget.
It starts with F, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. But that was like a Naruto town.
Yeah, because like that's probably the cringiest, weebiest thing I can say.
Well, everyone asks like, what time era is Japan in? And it's like it's the 90s because Japan just sort of looks like that.
Yeah, well, Naruto. People want to know what era. You said Japan.
Oh, what era is Japan in? The 90s.
Yeah, no. He meant Naruto because people play Pokemon and watch Naruto and other Japanese things here, and then we give them accolades for being charming, for certain qualities that they have. But then for me, I went to... How do I even structure this? Pokemon, Naruto, and other Japanese things have things in them that make the shows good because we see that as quirky and like creative. But in reality, that's just how Japan is.
Right.
That was so much easier. So in Pokemon, you ride a bike everywhere. There's Poke Centers everywhere. And you just you do a lot of walking and you do a lot of sightseeing.
There's a mixture of like in Pokemon specifically, there's a mixture of these huge, massive like mega cities that are super futuristic, and then like right next to them is an absolute like it's just a forest. Yeah, that's how Japan is.
And you like if you play that here, you're just like, oh, it's so quirky. No, that's how Japan is.
And in America, you go from like New York, and then you leave the city, and there's like a suburb. Things get a little smaller. You see little towns and things. But in Japan, it's like a hard line because there's no room in Japan.
Yeah, and then the thing with Naruto was like Naruto is a beautifully crafted, made up world with a lot of good world building, but it takes influence from Japan because if you watch Naruto, you can never really vibe on there's what the time period is.
It's like a mixture between like the 70s and the 90s in the show. Before Boruto, of course.
Because when you watch Naruto, people are like, oh, is this like medieval times? Is this modern? Is this...
Why do the houses look so old, but they have like telephones and
TVs? Yeah. And the reason is because that's how Japan is. I slept in a tiny little shit, wooden like paper door Japanese hut, basically. But I had a flat screen and a fucking PS4 at my disposal. Everyone there has the same thing. Everyone's living in like stuff that was built in like the 70s, but they've all got, modern tech.
In Chiba, in my cousin's house, my brother went there during the winter and got a completely different experience because they don't have AC. They don't have any kind of insulation.
I froze to death.
Yeah, like the walls are made of paper, and that is the only thing keeping you from the elements. So everyone has kerosene heaters.
I fucking froze to death.
Everyone's got fans. Fans are still one of like a really popular commodity because in the summertime it gets fucking hot, and you don't have like a house that you can come to that's like air conditioned. You just have to fan yourself. Because you're not gonna like the thing. Why don't the Japanese tear down their old buildings? Is it nostalgia or is it like respect?
Neither. Because maybe it's just because they don't need a lot.
Well, there's maybe so. I feel like from an American standpoint, I feel like it would be a lot more efficient to just make a house with walls. But that's just.
Well, those exist
and also one that isn't like you flick a cigarette at a house and then it bursts into flame because it's made out of bloody paper.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it is the entirety of Japan in those areas is so charming that it doesn't even matter. Like the way of life there, it makes you. They have that Zen thing about them. They still have the remnants and the respect that the Shinto religion gave them. So you just have to go in order to understand what that is. There's a great peace in me when I went there.
Yeah, no, jeez, man, I've spent the least amount of my time traveling has been in Japan. Now, actually, no, I spent more time in Japan than Canada, but whatever. I don't live in Japan. I'm not Japanese, but my time there was like the most at peace time in my fucking life. And it's because they don't stress out there. They just don't stress.
Well, they do in the corporate sector, but even then it's like contained. Okay, stress wasn't the right word, but like it's just so calm. it's hard to place because it's like you try to apply it to American things. Like there isn't social turmoil, but there is. There isn't like serious issues going on that we've got here, but there are. But they handle it differently.
Yeah, they handle it very calmly,
and they handle it internally. They don't let it. They don't let the outside world affect them very much.
Well, I mean, yeah, like Japan's great, but it also does have its problems.
Oh, they're so racist.
Yeah, they're incredibly racist.
But then again, even that, they keep it to themselves.
Yeah, like if you're black and go to Japan, people are gonna think to themselves, fucking.
I hope he doesn't do anything fucking sketchy or illegal.
I hope he doesn't act black because that would annoy me on my trip to the mall. But no one's gonna walk up to you and beat the shit out of you. Unlike here, no one's gonna try to.
No one's gonna throw a racial slur.
Yeah,
at
no
you.
one's gonna try to do anything.
It's just like internal racism that never gets shown.
Yeah, and it's
Whereas
not
here
exercise.
we got KKK.
Because again, it all goes back to they care more about society than themselves. Oh, I smell bad, so I'm gonna get off this train so everyone can go to work without having to smell me.
It would be very easy and it would be very beneficial to have vending machines absolutely everywhere.
Oh yeah,
so we're going to do that.
Oh, I never even fucking got to that.
Bubbies.
So in Pokemon, there's Pokemon centers literally everywhere, and they're all exactly the same uniform. That's how it is in Japan. There's Family Marts everywhere.
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 Like, holy shit.
Like, hey, I need something. Oh, cool, a Family Mart 2 feet away. Cool.
Like I was in Chiba, a place that was completely derelict. I could like walk over like 3 minutes away. There was a place where you could get absolutely anything that you could possibly need. And somehow it's also really small.
Was it a Family Mart?
I don't know what it was. It was in Japanese.
Was it green and blue?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, Family Mart's in English also, and it's literally all over Japan.
Well, then I guess it wasn't Family Mart. We mostly made our stops at 7-Eleven so that we could do the ATM thing. I still need to figure out what that was all about. 7-Eleven in Japan seemed to be connected somehow because that's how we would always withdraw money from the ATMs. And it could only be in the 7-Eleven for some strange reason. I'll ask my mother the logistics of that.
That's funny.
Oh, the land of convenience indeed.
But yeah, no, it's so because it's super convenient and it's super
it's considerate.
Yeah, and it's fucking awesome, and I wish we could have that here.
Man, we would really be able to cut down on things, and it would be really convenient if our trains went 600 miles an hour. Let's do that, and let's make it go absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
Whereas, here we can't even get the L train working.
Here we can't even get a train to Nashville because the fucking mayor slept with a bodyguard or whatever.
And give a fuck about that for some reason.
Everybody was like, yeah, that's right. She's not wholesome. No train.
No train. No $5 billion project to increase the economy of Nashville, to be an example for other cities to look upon. That is infuriating. What else about Japan? We can't not talk about the food of Japan.
Japan's food is amazing.
I miss it every day.
The portion is kind of surprising. Because, Japanese people are so tiny.
Oh, but they fucking eat.
Yeah, like they're so tiny, so you're like, oh, they probably don't eat. Then you go and
you see a little 18-year-old girl, and she's like 5 foot solid, and she scarfs down like a whole fucking buffet of things.
We went to a ramen place, and it's like, 1,000 yen for a bowl of ramen. That's it. And I'm like, all right, whatever, $10. Here you go. And then it's like a fucking huge. It's like a gallon. It's like a gallon of broth and like
it's like a serving bowl. Like you would use for like a family thing.
Yeah, it's like a gallon of broth, like 2 thick slabs of pork, and then like a fucking 2 pounds of noodles.
But good goddamn if I didn't suck the whole thing down right then and there. Oh my god,
amazing.
Jeez, they love these little white. Did you ever have the whitefish things, the like white bait?
Maybe
they use in everything these little white fish, and they're just like the most It's like the rice of the sea, basically. It's the most malleable protein that you can have, and they put it in absolutely everything. And I completely fell in love with them. I wish that I could get them here because I would just like throw them in there with everything.
As long as you are doing something, you are a respected member of society.
Indeed.
And that's kind of depressing in a way, and I'll explain why. Because the reason I go to Japan is because like half my friends live there and they all teach English, and so they're constantly telling me about living in Japan and like how it is there and they've been living there, over 3 years, so they've been there a while. They know how shit works. And according to my friend Neeland, whenever he asks any of his students what their hobbies are, they say one thing.
Yeah.
And he goes, "What do you mean?" And they go, well, not anymore because he's been there forever. But when he first got there, he would ask them, "What are your hobbies?" And they would say, "Oh, I am an artist. I'm good at drawing."
Or I play the violin.
I play the violin. I play soccer.
I play StarCraft.
I play video game.
One video game.
I play video game one.
I speed run Mario 64.
And then he goes, "All right, what else?" And they go, "What do you mean, what else?" So how Japanese, and again, this is actually Japan's actually in a major culture shock shift right now. They're becoming more like us.
Yes, they are. They're having
Actually.
to deal with like American millennial ideals being instilled in their youth.
But traditionally, how it's supposed to be, air quotes, in Japan is that like you wake up, you go to work/school, and then in your free time you hone your one thing that you're good at. You hone your one hobby. So if you play sports, it's you wake up, you go to school or work, and then you go and you do that sport, and that's just it. You just repeat.
And you'd better be the best at that sport.
Yeah, and you have to be good at it. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
And I think that the most extreme and silly example, like in middle school, it was cool to like, if someone would be able to do like the pen trick where they flip it around their fingers and stuff. There is an entire like subculture of Japan amongst the school children where that's all they do. That is the single thing that they do. And they're like virtuosos. They can take it. They can do like these weird and crazy things, but they can do nothing else.
Yeah, and so like it's depressing because they only have one thing that they can claim as like part of who they are and like what their personality is.
And then once they get into the corporate sector, it's like, does it really even matter anyway?
I guess. And then, but on the flip side of that, they're still respected. It doesn't matter what you do. Like there's literally like a fucking 14-year-old girl at Neelan's school that like just draws porn. And no one cares because they're like, "Oh, you're good at drawing porn. You can, as long just keep doing it. You will get a job as a porn artist." And that is a thing.
It's a really lucrative thing in Japan.
They're like, yes, that there you go. You have a skill. It doesn't matter what it is. If you go to the arcade all day and play at the arcade all day, you're still respected as long as you're doing something and feeding the society. Even if it is going to the arcade. You are respected as like a member of society. Like, if you're in the US and you go to school and then go and, if you go to school, work, and then spend all your quarters on Pac-Man,
your mom's going to beat you with a
Your mom's going to beat the shit out of you and you're going to be like, what?
And then everyone's going to call you a fucking nerd loser.
Yeah, but like if you're in Japan and your process is go to work, school, and then go play fucking, which by the way, their arcades are insane.
Oh my God.
And you go and play fucking, taiko drums at an arcade. That's cool. It's like, yeah, as long as you're not on the street being homeless and you have like a goal, they don't care what it is. Which is the cool part.
I had a brain blast. Perhaps that's sort of the origin of the anime trope of each person has like one thing attributed to them. Like this person uses scissors as a weapon or something like that. That's an interesting thought. Maybe there's a little bit more of a cultural thing than we first thought about that, because here in America, I've heard many people, it's like, "Oh, this guy is fucking firepower," and that's like his only attribute. That might be like a storytelling thing, but I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I really do like, again, just that we could learn a lot from Japan, but again, it does have its issues.
Bubbies.
So like, a lot of liberals think that Japan is liberal, but it's not. Japan is very conservative.
Extremely conservative.
Japan is extremely conservative. They do not value women.
No.
At all. I literally watched a show called Kawaii versus Boos, which means cute girls versus ugly girls. And it was literally like an hour-long game show where they had like fat, unattractive women try to do like physical feats against like in-shape, attractive women. And it was just, a slapstick of like fat women falling and stuff. And, people be like, this is funny because because they're fat. It's literally that episode of Black Mirror where they have the fat people go do game shows and then all the in-shape people like make electricity on the bikes. And, and then again, there's a lot of, the Yakuza has a lot of control politically, a lot of control financially, which that's not really a conservative thing. I'm just saying that is a problem that they have, which the Yakuza are fucking dope. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like Japan's history is so unique and cool.
It's so extreme.
Sarah didn't know that the Yakuza were like the remnants of samurai. And so I explained that to her and she was, that's fucking dope.
Or that they're like their tattoos were the tapestry of their ancestors, because they skin you alive and then they hang it up there so that your ancestors can see your fucking skin art.
Yeah.
Which is the most metal thing I've ever heard.
So metal. If the listeners don't know what I'm talking about, I guess I'll close with that fun fact. So Japanese history was essentially the Wild West, but with samurai. And like you said,
thousands of years,
because no one could get to them. They had no outside interaction. The Mongols tried to come, but every time they did, they would get washed away by a fucking tsunami. So like Japan was left alone for like centuries. And so they had no one else to fucking murder but each other. And so the Japanese had these crazy, brutal civil wars for like ever. And they didn't have like borders and states. They just had clans, like 1,000 people strong armies of like cousins and, uncles and brothers and sisters, and just a lot of like inbreeding in a weird way. And so it's just like, hey, we're the, to be cliche and use Naruto, we're the Uzumaki clan. Like that's also where the trope in Naruto comes from. It comes from its own history. It's like, oh, we are the so-and-so clan. We are a 1,000 strong family, and this is blah, blah, blah. And so they fought each other for centuries as samurai, which was like their version of knights. And then eventually the emperor took over, and then...
Yes, there was, I can't remember the name of the first emperor, but basically there was just... It was like the first Hokage. You get stronger than everyone else, and you start amassing them, and then all of a sudden, you got yourself an empire, and you're the daimyo.
Yeah. So the way of the samurai, because the samurai wasn't just... Samurais were similar to knights, and how knights had like knighthood.
But they were
like,
hardly soldiers.
And chivalry and stuff. But the samurai were like fucking hardcore about it, because it's Japan, and, they want to be really good at the one thing that they're good at, which is being a samurai. So when the samurai was like legally disbanded, the samurais then became like ninja. They became like rogue, like rogue warriors, just like literally just like living weapons with no purpose. Like no purpose and no desire to be part of society. So eventually over time, the samurai just became underground criminals, and that slowly devolved into the Yakuza, and that still is a thing today. How many like pure blood samurai descendants are in the Yakuza now? Probably none, maybe very little. But like that is where the Yakuza came from.
The infighting in the Yakuza is probably was probably pretty severe. So the roots have probably been uprooted, but nevertheless, their traditions have sort of retained their original samurai brutality.
The Yakuza act of cutting off your pinky to like say sorry, that's samurai. That's not Yakuza, that's samurai.
If you fucking commit some sort of shame, you need to kill yourself.
Yeah, like
it's
all
not
of that,
an option.
All of that comes down to samurai. And that's what makes, the Yakuza a lot cooler than the fucking like Crips.
Or the mob, or even like the mob. The mob is just like, hey, family, we do things from in the shadows. And then the Yakuza are there. It's like, we do things in the shadows. And also, if you fuck up, you kill yourself. and also, if you commit something that's less worthy, not worthy of killing yourself, you cut off a finger.
Like a lot of crime organizations are for, like, obtaining wealth and nothing else. Or they were like accidents because they're immigrants that couldn't get normal jobs, so they had to go to crime to get money. But the Yakuza was literally like, we have to maintain
our tradition.
We have to maintain our society. We have to maintain our tradition. But yeah, traveling is cool.
That's the heart of Japan, really. You have to maintain your traditions and the honor of your clan, which has become the entire country, which makes the country fucking great.
Yeah, very efficient.
Bubbies. The land of convenience, the land of tasty food, and the land of hentai. So that about sums up some of our traveling things. I've been to Colorado. When I was a kid, I went to New York. those things are not nearly as worthy of storytelling as going to Japan or going to Canada. It is definitely worthwhile.
I've been to Mexico. Don't go.
Don't go to Mexico.
Don't go to Mexico. Don't. Or China. China and Mexico are not worth visiting.
If any of you listeners have never been traveling before, I would say make plans for it, save up for it, because it changes you. You see something that isn't America. You see the news that isn't, in America. Non-American news is so much different and is such a massive breath of fresh air. But that is a topic for another day. This has been this episode of Bubbies.
Episode 7 of Bubbies. Like, subscribe,
and
hit that bell button.
Hit that bell button so that we can annoy you. When you hit the bell button, every Friday, I'll go, meh, in your ear to tell you that we have a new episode out. If you have any questions or if you would like to just tell us something, we have our email at bubbiespodcast@gmail.com.
And love you. Bye-bye. All right.